How did Hitler fascistize the German economy, 1933 to 1939? Suffering many losses after World War I, being severely damaged by the Treaty of Versailles. Largely dependent on the outside. And then affected by the Great Depression. Hitler's fascist policy somewhat restored the German economy and prepared resources for war. When mentioning Nazi Germany, people often remember the policy of invasion and war based on the foundation of military power and Hitler's doctrine of expanding living space. However, in order to cause World War II, Hitler gradually fascistized the economy, suffering many losses after World War I, being severely damaged by the Treaty of Versailles. Largely dependent on the outside, and then affected by the Great Depression. Hitler's fascist policy somewhat restored the German economy and prepared resources for war. Forced unemployment policy. Unemployment in the early 1930s was one of the biggest challenges facing the German economy. In 1929, Germany had 1.9 million unemployed people, and in 1932 it peaked at 5.6 million. According to Hitler, the core of the German economic miracle was the employment and rearmament programs. The Nazi government proposed many solutions to reduce unemployment, but they were all forced and negative in nature in order to have a cheap and abundant labor source in industries related to war preparation. First, in 1933, Hitler established the National Labor Service, Reichsarbeitsdienst, RAD. RAD stipulated that young men aged 18 to 25 had to participate in repairing the transport system, improving agricultural land and planting trees. They had to work, voluntarily, for 2 years and live in militarized barracks. RAD helped reduce unemployment, providing cheap manpower for the army, and gradually helping Germany rearm. However, they received low wages, worked long hours with high intensity in poor conditions. Second, the government implemented national projects in public construction, roads, schools, hospitals. Government spending on these programs increased from 18 billion marks in 1933 to 38 billion in 1938. Typical was the construction of a series of autobahns, highways, to stimulate transportation. The automobile industry and some other industries. By 1935, more than 125,000 men were involved in building the high-speed highways, and by 1938, about 3.500 kilometers of roads had been completed. Third, the Nazis used the rearmament program to reduce unemployment. The Treaty of Versailles in 1919 stipulated that Germany could only retain 100,000 infantry, no air force and limited navy. However, in 1935 Hitler broke the treaty, stipulating that all men aged 18 to 25 must be conscripted. As a result, the army increased to nearly 1.4 million men in 1939. Government spending on rearmament increased from 3.5 billion, 1933, to 26 billion marks, 1939, and created many jobs through the development of the military industry, gradually preparing weapons for war. Fourth, Hitler excluded women and Jews from the labor market. This was a negative, racist and unequal measure when it only recognized white German men and some other European races in the labor force. The wife had to quit her job unless the husband lost his job. Single women who worked as doctors, lawyers, and teachers were also encouraged by the government to hand over their jobs to their male colleagues. Jews were fired, even lost their citizenship, and were not allowed to participate in social activities. These negative practices significantly reduced the number of workers on the market, and thereby contributed to reducing the overall unemployment rate. Privatization policy collusion between the Nazi Party and crony capitalists. In form, Germany transferred state ownership of many companies and enterprises to the private sector. But in reality, state control of the entire economy was ensured through various regulations. Private owners had the right to control workers, employment regimes, and wages. The government received contributions from 17 different business groups. Many businesses continued to support the Hitler regime during the war and profited from the persecution of Jews. This was a clear manifestation of the collusion between the government and large corporations to exploit the people. The transferred companies belonged to many different industries and fields such as steel, mining, banking, shipyards, railways, and railroads. The Nazi Party established a series of organizations to seize the benefits that previously belonged to the people. The German Labor Front, Deutsche Arbeitsfront, DA, supervised vocational training or inspected the status of factories and working conditions. Before 1933, social welfare belonged to local authorities, but was later partially transferred to the National Socialist People's Welfare Organization, Nationalso.